We're live with episode 6 of I'm Empowered here. Tendai, you're back. We missed you last week. How you feeling?
Yes, I'm feeling better. Last week I just had a migraine, so I just needed to get off the
Um,
screen. But I heard it went well,
are
but
you?
I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, it went well. We had a lot of fun. We had our colleague Shir Godot step in and co-host. I figured that you, as a PhD in neuroscience, might be able to avoid migraines in some way or another, but I guess they happen to the best of us.
No, we still haven't discovered how to avoid migraines, but it's coming. It's coming.
Well, I'm sure when that solution comes, plug and play is definitely going to back that and plug it into a pharmaceutical corporate VC or a biohealth corporate VC and play with it, right, Grace?
Absolutely.
Great,
Okay. I
great,
know who to reach
great.
out to then
Grace, thanks.
when I make that business.
We'll make it happen. Grace, thanks so much for being here with us today. Appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited.
So we want to get to your whole story and your background and everything that you guys are doing. But I wanted to just start by asking a question that going forward we're gonna be asking all of our guests, which is, what's the moment that you felt empowered to step into this role within the VC and Africa ecosystem and focus on it? Talk to us about that moment and what it meant to you and sort of how it manifests.
Sure. So before this role, before getting into sort of the tech scene and joining Plug and Play, I was in investment banking for 10 years, and the last 5 years of which was at Goldman Sachs. And I was fortunate enough to spend 2 years working and living in the New York office as part of that journey. And whilst I was living in New York from 2017 to 2019, I managed to forge some friendships with a group of amazing ladies at the bank that were part of formulating Launch with Goldman Sachs, Launch with GS. And that's a $500 million initiative where they were looking to invest in women-owned businesses and investment managers in the US. And I got selected to be on the ambassador board of that. Basically, and that what entailed is going out into the ecosystem, meeting women VCs and entrepreneurs, helping them, with their business plans, et cetera, and have them pitch to Goldman for some funding. And it was getting into this market that I realized just how VC in the US feels like it's actually coming out of a tap, like it's on tap. Just the vast amounts of VC opportunities or that is out there, or VC money that is out there, and seeing how on the entrepreneurial culture as well. Failure is a badge of honor. So a lot of VCs, if anything, they'll only give you money knowing you failed at least 2 or 3 times at something. But really, because there's just so much scale and there's so much money to come by, it allows entrepreneurs and it gives them the flexibility to perfect their craft. And that's how you get the winning unicorns of A, B, and Bs, et cetera, et cetera. Now, having come from Africa, South Africa in particular, failure is not considered a badge of honor. Investments are not as easy to come by. And so just seeing that dichotomy or just seeing that contrast is what empowered me to say, if I was to ever hang my investment banking boots, if I wanted to be part of a force for change, and being proudly African, wanting to have an impact in South Africa and on the African continent, it would be to be a vessel to have more funding get onto the African continent, be it in the form of corporate funding or VC funding. And so when my paths crossed with Plug and Play, that was that moment for me of, okay, this is why. And that's how I basically got into VC.
Amazing. So it was the moment when you met Plug and Play that you realized this is how you're going to help the ecosystem, for lack of better words.
I think that's what crystallized it for me. But I think the aha moment was when I was, working and living in the US, and then I realized that there's something about living once as an African or even in nationality, going, moving like to another country. It either makes you more cosmopolitan or more worldly, or it makes you more proudly African, so to speak. And maybe I'm also maybe too binary about it. But for me, I didn't go to the US and be like, I never want to go back to Africa. I actually went to the US and realized just how I am proud to be an African, and I want to be part of Africa's success story. And I think it was seeing just how, the world of plenty, and is what made me realize how there's a green field in South Africa, there's a green field in Africa, and my skill set is actually of more value to my continent than it is in the US.
Okay, that's great. So how did you actually even get into contact with Plug and Play? And then how did that relationship sort of forward into you transferring to South Africa?
Right. So this is where I'm a proponent of, you must always put out into the universe what it is that you're looking for, because it will always come to you. Plug and Play came to the Goldman Sachs offices in Johannesburg. So what happened was in 2019, the Goldman Sachs Johannesburg office asked me to go back to the Johannesburg office, and I moved back to the Johannesburg. Yeah, so I was still when I moved from New York to Johannesburg, I was still with Goldman, and on one of the days, someone from Plug and Play asked to have a meeting with my boss, or my former boss, and my former boss couldn't take the meeting. And my former boss effectively said, Grace, it looks like these people are from the US, it's tech, it's definitely up your alley, you were doing launch with GS stuff, it actually might be more related to launch with GS stuff. Please take the meeting for me, I don't have time for it. I was like, okay, little did I know that would be my next job opportunity. So Plug and Play comes, so I take the meeting, they come to the Goldman Sachs offices, they say, hey, this is who we are. We've been dabbling a bit in the South African market, but now we want to be a little bit more intentional. And so, Goldman being Goldman, we just thought we'd greatly appreciate some help. If you could maybe just steer us in the right direction of the types of networks, be it from public and private sector, and the corporate relationships that you have. So I was, because I was already, passionate, and the bug had already hit me from New York. I was like, I'd be more than willing to help you for free, because I was like, it's not what you're asking us to do, is not what we really do in the office here. Anyway, so out of my own time, I was helping this girl really navigate. And then she came back and said, Grace, all those introductions, all those places that you took me to, they were so helpful. It was amazing. And actually long story short, but they were like, okay, we've decided that we want to have an office in South Africa. And I think you'd be perfect for the job. Please, please come to Silicon Valley, meet the rest of my team, and see what you think. That's effectively how I got the job at Plug and Play, helping someone.
So then you went to Silicon Valley.
So I went to Silicon Valley in October. It was pre-COVID, yeah. So I ended up taking some time off. I went to Silicon Valley for about 10 days. And met the team, saw what they were doing, and I was just like, wow, and seeing just how much opportunity that I think and impact it could have in South Africa. And that's where I was sold. And then And the rest is history, as they say, or not quite, because little did I know that, because this is now October 2019, little did I know that hardly, 3 months later, we would be in the midst of a pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not where you imagined it. I'm actually in the Bay Area right now, so not far from Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I'm originally from the Bay Area.
Yes, I remember you
I grew up in
saying. What are
Oregon.
you doing in the Bay Area, Tendai? Sorry, I know this is my interview, but I'm curious.
No.
Yeah.
Feel free to flip it, Grace.
So I'm transitioning into VC while I'm finishing up my thesis, and so there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity here in the Bay Area. So I thought that this would just be a great environment / ecosystem for me to be in while I finish up.
You couldn't be at a better place. Awesome.
Yeah.
And Tendai, you also carry that very proud African these days into your, traversing.
Yeah.
I thought a lot about you in our conversations when Grace was talking about, the ways of either like sort of just being cosmopolitan or just, really, like owning the fact that, you're kind of there on loan.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think like you said, I don't know what your experience was here, but I think there's a lot of people who are actually interested in investing in Africa, but there's a lack of transparency, right?
Yeah.
And so like one of my biggest goals is just to help to improve the transparency for foreign investors, especially within the Silicon Valley region, to invest in Africa. So I mean, like even in your work in Plug and Play, do you interact at all with people that are based in the US who maybe they're interested in investing in startups that you might interact with?
Absolutely. And I think it was also part and parcel of why I sort of took the role is I saw it as a way of, the best of both worlds. Like I must admit, like I love US, like US, I also consider it, it's also an amazing, vibrant place to be. And so I saw this opportunity as a way to continue, developing relationships and interacting with the ecosystem in the US whilst being a voice for Africa. So yes, in this role, I have found that, I've interacted with a lot of, different stakeholders, be it even your Y Combinators, your Sequoias, etc. of the world. And, really, talking about, like Africa Incorporated and just the opportunity that is there. And I think, it goes without saying that the interest is definitely brewing. I think Nigeria has done a very good job. They're getting a lot of traction from Silicon Valley. And now it's, the onus on us for Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, to follow suit. But I think that's where the interest is definitely increasing from the Valley.
Yeah, I mean, this week in and of itself has just been one of the most slam-packed weeks of VC Africa news, like ever since I kind of joined the ecosystem a couple of years ago. Floodwave announced its $1 billion valuation. Then like 2 days later, they signed a deal with PayPal. And then there was another company, a South African car company that raised a big round, and it's at the point where I'm actually having trouble keeping up, which is exactly where we need to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think worth a shout out. Plug and Play is actually an investor in Flutterwave. They were one of the first ones to invest in Flutterwave in 2016. Yep. Yeah. So I was very proud to.
In 2016, they invested in Flutterwave.
So they were one of the first. So the Plug and Play model in the beginning was very much offering office space to the startups, and they would have the benefit of like shared services, etc. And Flutterwave was one of the effectively tenants. And the team at the time believed in them so much that they effectively said, your rent, what you would pay in rent is us putting equity into your business. So actually the likes of, so GB and E and Ian, they used to be tenants in the plug and Sunnyvale. And I guess as they were like, raising, because I think they've raised quite a few times, we just never, we kept participating and we never sold out. So we were very, very happy to see them be a unicorn. So we're proud shareholders ourselves of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow. So, and this is good, Tendai, because when we go to Joburg to visit Grace, now we don't have to ask who's picking up the tab when we go for ice cream.
That's very true. Good point.
All that equity money has got to go to something.
I said plug and play, not Grace Legodi. There's a difference.
I was reading about plug and play and sort of the business model, and it seems kind of unique. I was reading how you actually connect startups to corporate clients, and the corporations actually help those startups to innovate. So can you kind of go into more detail about that?
Yeah, sure. So the plug and play business model is effectively three categories. One is the VC, where we actually invest, we put small check sizes into technology startups. And this is where the Flutterwave success story is coming out of. And it's not a fund, it's an investment holding, because Plug and Play is actually a family office. Not many people know that. So that's the one element. The second element is effectively our startup business development accelerator. This is not, we're definitely not, like I wouldn't compare us to the depth of like a Y Combinator or like a 500 startups, in that this is more of an accelerator where we take zero equity. And we don't require the entrepreneur to pay anything to be part of the accelerator program. And really, it's more of a business development accelerator program for B2B startups. So once they are sort of post incubation, they've got their MVP, they've got at least their first customer. That's where we come in to say we have this whole corporate partner network that we can help you do, have more use cases and do pilots with. And so we do mentorships and training and workshops that ultimately help them with their business development strategy and expanding. And this is where the connection, comes in on the corporate side, where corporates, we work with corporates to help them with their innovation strategy, on a plug and play approach of plugging in startups into the organization to see whether their tech solution can either help with generating more revenue, saving costs, or doing things more productively.
Okay, so that's where plug and play comes in. It makes sense now. The name.
Right. They plug the startup into the corporate, and the corporate play with the tech. That's why it's called plug and play.
So do you have any success stories about successful plug and play projects that you've actually helped to facilitate?
Yeah, we do. So we have a corporate partner in South Africa called Sanlam, and we've been working them for quite some time.
Sanlam, the financial, right?
The insurance,
those guys,
so we've been helping them quite a bit, and there's so through the, and that's where it's like you realize it actually takes time, but through the iterations of different startups coming in, testing in a sandbox, and then using live data, etc. I think we've managed to have 3 pilots go into commercialization with Sanlam. So we definitely are seeing a lot of value that is coming out of the model, and I'm personally very passionate about the model in a sense from a entrepreneur perspective, in that I try to implore on the entrepreneur sometimes of don't dilute too soon in terms of purely relying on VC as a way to get funding. But rather bootstrap and self-fund yourself, and the more business that you do with the corporate, that's how you generate the revenue and the profitability, and then you can just sort of self-sustain yourself, as opposed to getting a VC in.
Yeah, because really bringing on a VC at the end of the day is it's hiring your own boss, for lack of better words. But then your boss also has his or her bosses, which are the shareholders, and it's giving up. But what you're saying about revenue as revenue and bootstrapping, enables you with some control, and of course, if you have to raise, it's so important to find the right investors. And understanding what your goal is will really help you in that direction. I mean, with a lot of founders who don't aspire to be a $1 billion company, but they still want to raise VC capital, and that's not necessarily the right system. There are many different funding options out there. So it's really important to educate yourself, but be able to sort of plug that in with where you want to be a couple years from now.
You're touching on a very important point there. And this is another thing also sometimes trying to implore on people that we mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture. An entrepreneur shouldn't focus on trying to be the next unicorn. It's actually okay to be a couple of million rand dollar, or a couple of million valuation, as opposed to saying you're a unicorn, because ultimately, if you still have a functioning business, you have created an innovation, you are creating jobs, then that already is impact in and of itself. And people should be content with that as well. And in that instance, it's not the be all and end all if you don't get the VC funding.
And I mean, I gotta say that, the man or the woman or, team that has brought in that type of money from building that type of business that you mentioned, they're probably bringing in a pretty nice lump in and of itself. So it's beyond just the impact on the product, but it's the execution and the sustainability. And there's no problem in that, right? We can't all be unicorns as much as we want to be. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, just to shift back in the story a little bit, right? We've talked about plug and play and this incredible moment where you decided to leave Goldman Sachs, which is a pretty good place to get to, and dedicate yourself to the VC in Africa ecosystem and to just doing whatever it is with your time and your skills and your relationships to put capital into the hands of entrepreneurs on the continent. And you also talked about this incredible this incredible incredibly strong identity that you brought with you to New York. I'd love to hear a little bit about what was growing up like for you? What was your bring us through a little bit of growing up in South Africa and sort of what your journey was before you set out on this incredible chapter. Because we were introduced, I want to say, like, while you were still in San Francisco, you had just started.
I was
you were in lockdown in San Francisco, and we were introduced by one of my favorite people in the world, Zandile, who's a childhood friend of yours.
We met. We met during we met in Johannesburg while we were both in the trenches of investment banking. She was at JP Morgan. She was at JP Morgan at the time. I was at Goldman Sachs at the time. And it was just, misery, sorry, in inverted commas, misery loves company in terms of, in the trenches, working so hard. And we didn't really have a lot of people that, could share in the experience. And so, we just kind of got so close together because we could just completely relate of burning the midnight oil, doing benchmarking and valuations, et cetera. So honestly, it's been humble beginnings, how I got to Goldman Sachs, to be honest with you. So I'm a born and bred, South African from a place called Legodi in Polokwane. So in the like rural areas of South Africa.
Wow.
In the northern province of South Africa. And I just had I couldn't have been blessed with, the most selfless parents who really saved like my dad was a teacher and my mom was a social worker. And they really just, saved every cent.
I'm
Oh,
a social
really?
worker as
Oh,
well.
wow. That's why we get along so well, Caleb.
Of course. That's also why we're both so messed
So
up.
they sacrificed so much for me to have the best education in Polokwane. And then I moved on to get a scholarship and went to University of Cape Town for 4 years. And it was during that time that, my world was really opened up. I was doing all sorts of like exchange programs. I was like, doing the United Nations debating. So that was my first stint in New York. Spent some time in Europe. Going to Greece. So that's where I started to see how, wow, there's a whole world out here to be conquered or to be seized. And I think that's what sort of just like really like ignited my knowing that I wanted to have a global career. And so then I graduated in 2008, and then that's when I started working in Johannesburg starting 2009. So worked for a few banks, and then it was so I started at Investec, also spent some time at Deutsche Bank. And I think just between the hybrid of, experiencing a South African bank, experiencing a European bank, it was only natural that, I would want to also, go to the highest of heights. And so when the opportunity presented itself to start at Goldman Sachs in 2014, I took it. I took it with both hands. 18-hour days and all.
Wow.
And how did your parents feel?
Proud, like I think, super proud. Even though like half the time they don't really understand what I'm doing. Bless their hearts. But I think just super proud that at a young age of 22, I was already independent. They didn't have to answering me anymore. I was really self-sustaining. I think, and being the last born and I'm an only girl. I think definitely, it gives me, it gives me great joy to know that my parents, that they see the fruits of their labor and their sacrifices of ensuring I got the best education, that I made the most of it. And I actually rewarded them in 2018, I think it was. I actually had my mom and dad come to New York, and for like a week, to come and just see what I see. And it was such a humbling moment because my dad was turning 70 at the time, and that was his first time on a flight out and flying overseas. It was his first time leaving South Africa. So
what was their reaction?
That's what I'm saying. It was a humbling thing because he kept looking like he looked like a father. Because I also made sure that I took them to all the like the key like hotspots that they would see on TV. So I made sure that they went to the Empire State Building, took them to the Statue of Liberty, took them to Times Square, took them to Central Park. And they were just so mesmerized by all the lights and the buildings, But anyway, sorry, I'm
No, that's great. This is really interesting.
But that was how I that was my thank you to them, to say thank you so much for the sacrifices that you made, because now look where I am. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, would you describe them as also just very proud South Africans?
Definitely.
Proud Africans?
Definitely. So I think also, safe to say, my parents grew up, in the height of apartheid. And
Sure.
so for them to be able to see their children live free and really make the most of the opportunities that present themselves, I think it's safe to say for them, they feel like it's a life well lived. They're both in pension now, so they're both retired. Yeah.
Nice. And they're
They
still up in the north?
Yeah, they're still up in the north. They're still up in the north. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I imagine though, you know, and Tendai, you know, please jump in, but I imagine that like more than you bring them to New York, literally what you're doing today within the ecosystem and what you're doing for your country and for so many young people and, you know, dreamers and visionaries that didn't necessarily have that opportunity. I mean, it is a sacrifice to step away from, you know, the comforts of Goldman Sachs and the 18-hour days in the world in a world like this. They must be just like beaming with pride, knowing, you know, not just that you're, you know, sustainable and, you know, that you're self-sufficient and independent and able to take care of them, but you're using all of the fruits of their labors to, you know, dare I say, feed and nurture others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just thank you so much for sharing that with us. That really just is special. Yeah. So let's circle back to plug and play. What are some of the things that you guys have going on right now?
So much.
Oh,
Where do I even begin? Yeah, so on the VC side, like we're definitely, you know, always on the lookout for any high potential startups that we can invest in. We're really, you know, I'm using myself as a vessel and plug and play as a vessel to be that extra avenue of capital that can go into the continent. So naturally, that keeps us very, very busy. There are so many entrepreneurs out there that need their funding. So I would say that's the sort of the one angle. And then even on the corporate innovation side, I think it's safe to say, like, South Africa structurally, we're a country that is driven by corporates, and it's been quite a journey to say to corporates, you know, you don't want to get left behind in terms of the types of innovation and changes that are happening in the world. And really let us help you, you know. So there have been a few successes, but at the same time, I do find that, you know, we're in an environment which is very hard. And so when corporates are really just trying not to fire people, it's sometimes very hard for them to justify putting money into innovation and R&D when they're really just trying to stay afloat. So that's also like sort of one sort of avenue that I sort of have seen. I just wanted to sort of keep it 100 that it's not all glitz and glamour and amazing. It's hard, and I think it takes time. It's a journey. But I think that the conversation is there, and people really want to, you know, act and convert. I just think that it's something that will take time. In terms of like programs that we're doing already, so at the moment we are working together with the World Bank and the Department of Science and Innovation. It's a government entity in South Africa called Technology Innovation Agency, as well as Business Unity South Africa. We're doing we're busy and undergoing a corporate innovation challenge, where we're looking to connect corporates with entrepreneurs, Southern African entrepreneurs, and just as a way to show that proof in the pudding of how, you know, corporates should, you know, really be playing more of a role in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and being an alternative source of funding or self-funding. So that's one project I'm very, very excited about. And then the other project that will be launching in June is together with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, running I think sustainability Sustainability, recycling, climate change, I think is also very important topics that shouldn't be ignored. So we'll be running an accelerator program for the Alliance to End Plastic Waste starting in June as well. So lots on the go. And then fingers crossed, I've been also working very hard on something ag tech related. Unfortunately, I can't mention any names yet. I'm just waiting for that final stamp, but that's the other avenue. So basically focusing ag tech, sustainability, continuing to work with, on the financial services side with Sanlam and Yellowwoods. And then on a sort of top-down, sort of regional perspective, working with the World Bank as well as the other institutions that I mentioned.
Wow, those all sound like really great programs, and I think it sounds a lot different than what you would have been doing while you were an investment banker. So how was that transition for you, actually?
Honestly, everything that I did in banking, I think couldn't have prepared me better for the current role that I'm in. And this is where I see the fruits of the labor of having, the foundation of investment banking. It has such an immense transferable skill set from helping, like working with corporates. I mean, that was what I was doing on the daily in my sleep in investment banking. So understanding the corporate animal, how they work. So doing the project management and the process behind that. That was a big element of investment banking. The most exciting part or new part was working with startups in particular and, seeing their hardships. I think for me, that was actually the biggest development area that I had to go through. But in terms of, helping them, with valuation, helping them with their business plan, or, helping them just, even if it's just a pitch deck, that's stuff that I can do in my sleep. So that's where I was like, even though I've never been an entrepreneur, it was very easy to add value into the entrepreneur's life from the get-go.
That's true. So what's the main difference that you find between working with a startup founder and a corporate client?
So I think startup founders, especially those that don't have any finance or accounting backgrounds, they just want to, get busy with their business and just make it grow. Once you start telling them about income statement, balance sheet, business plan, forecasting, they're just like, I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where you realize that I don't consider myself a creator, but that's where you realize there is a place for a marriage between entrepreneurs and business-minded people for the bigger thing. So I think that for me, that was the biggest thing of just the very unstructured, all over the place, and you kind of have to like bring them back in to be like, I know, I see the vision with you, but we kind of need to go through all these steps to realize that vision. Whereas corporates, too rigid. They are also now, if anything, they're just like, no, this procedure, we have to do this. And also you'll see the culture, like some of the, your chief strategy officers or innovation officers, they've been in the seat for quite a long time. And so even convincing them and their business and sort of their business managers that, they need to be changed. It's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to tell them about a new product and having to think of putting in a new product in and seeing if it works. They're just like, nah, I'm comfortable. We're fine. So those are sort of the two extremes I've seen as an example. Yeah, between corporates and non-profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was reading some interesting stats that said that a lot of corporations, like now, one of the main ways that they grow is by taking up startups and merging with startups or acquiring startups.
Yeah.
So have you kind of seen that that's actually true?
Yes, we've actually seen the proof in the pudding already, as it's now finally starting to come to the fore. And if anything, what people also don't realize is that this is an avenue to keep mergers and acquisitions, like brewing. So most recently, in South Africa, as an example, we had a big retailer, Mr. Price, acquire a company called Yappy Chef. I don't know if you guys saw that, but Yappy Chef.
Yep.
Yeah, you should definitely look it up. It's an amazing story. So
Tell
it's
us about
really, I think it was 2 or 3 guys started in their mom's back garage. It's an e-commerce platform of selling kitchenware. It was first started, but now they sell literally everything on this platform. I'm sure you know Yappy Chef. So most recently, I think it was about 2 days ago. So this company, I think, has grown from literally they self-funded. They, effectively, prime example of bootstrapping. Did not rely on VC funding, etc. Then they, partnered with a corporate and tried to show them how they can add value to their e-commerce platform. And now look, we have an acquisition, M&A activities happening. Funders are happy, more jobs are being created. Now it's been absorbed into the, you know what I mean? So for me, that's the ultimate success story to show how you
totally. And it's an African corporate acquiring an African startup.
Yes.
So tell us, please tell us if there was an African investment banker that brokered the deal.
Better. True story. It's actually funny that you asked. So the advisors to Mr. Price was Investec, and one of the lead guys there, his name is Mark Ackerman. That guy used to be at Goldman Sachs in Johannesburg. That guy was basically, he was the person that taught me everything I know as it pertains to investment banking.
Wow.
I know, right? So that was for me also was such a full circle moment.
Yeah, full circle. Yeah.
Exactly. And apparently the startup, they didn't have any advisors. They were just no, we'll do this ourselves.
Love it. I love it. I mean, there may be a little bit of fear of failure on the continent, but the entrepreneurial spirit of African
it's there.
is just
Absolutely.
leagues ahead of anything that I've ever seen, just in terms of vibe and energy. But I want to ask, because Israel and our ecosystem is, I think, to this day, doing so well because of the fact that so many of these corporates have a presence here on the ground. When I was at our crowd, one of our selling points was that over 500 multinationals have R&D centers in Israel, most of whom also operate as corporate venture arms and sort of innovation centers and acceleration centers, all designed for integrating Israeli startups to their corporate businesses, which leads to sort of the most common scenario for an Israeli startup, which is an exit to a corporate through M&A. But with that, and we see this a lot we saw this in Africa when Stripe acquired Paystack a couple of months back, that I believe, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Grace, that a lot of startups are going to be acquired by corporates on the continent within the near future. And all those corporate VCs in Israel are, most of whom oversee sort of the activity in Africa, just where they're located regionally, are going to be opening up offices, and they're going to be setting up shop on the continent. But what they're going to be looking for in addition to technology is they're really going to be looking for teams and distribution channels. So they're going to be making sort of these really valuable acqui-hires of sorts in order to be able to enter the market in a really innovative and effective way. I want to hear your thoughts on that thesis, and also just sort of hear, what does the future hold for corporate venture and corporate innovation in the African startup ecosystem?
So I'll speak mainly to South Africa
Sure. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
speak and I say that because, so from a South Africa standpoint, I think what people don't fully appreciate is that structurally South Africa is driven, our economy is driven by corporations, and that's a structural thing. It's a structural thing in terms of when we went through apartheid, we were sanctioned by the rest of the world. And so when we were sanctioned by the rest of the world, effectively then it gave, rightfully, wrongfully so, the corporates that, were established in South Africa could only trade amongst themselves. So they grew and grew and grew amongst themselves, but they were not very competitive. Yeah, they weren't very competitive. So this is when in 1994, when the world started to open up and the sanctions were lifted, that was where we started, the level, the field started to become leveled, because that's when all your international, companies were coming into South Africa. So that's what people don't really have a full appreciation of. And it's not, and 1994 is not such a long time ago, when you're considering how long we were sanctioned for. So I think there still needs to be at least a good 10, 20 years where, to your point, there should be collaborations of international startups, international companies wanting to come into South Africa, but instead of leveraging the current corporates, leverage startups in South Africa as they're launching bad to expand on their own. But we just need to be delicate in terms of, actually going over that hump of transformation that needs to happen, in that I'm also all for startups growing to become multinationals in and of their own right, and not get swallowed, swallowed by big internationals, be it local or outside of South Africa.
Sure. Yeah. No, of course, that's what we want to see at the end of the day. But sometimes there are other factors that come into play, right? And in Israel, we struggle with the same thing. We want to see these companies, reach unicorn status and beyond, but sometimes there's just, different options. But like that's a really, really, really fascinating point that, you're mentioning. It's sort of about the balance and the historical nature of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
I actually had a question. That's a slight pivot, but I was wondering how COVID has actually affected the way you do your programming, because I imagine at Plug and Play before, maybe you had a lot of live events and other types of things that enabled founders to actually go and interact. So how have you had to pivot?
Honestly, it was a strike of luck that we found that the model, as with everyone really, had to figure out whether their model could withstand COVID or not. But we found that the model could be done virtually, and if anything, it was more efficient for it to be done virtually, because now people don't have to fly 24 hours, from Johannesburg to San Francisco to go attend a selection day and see all the innovations that are out there. Now, our selling point is gone are the days, and today it's involuntary, of having to fly east or west to go see the latest innovations. The way we have been able to, go virtual, we're effectively now bringing all these innovation ideas and deal flows and potential workings virtually to your doorstep. You don't have to move.
Yeah.
And yet you're still getting the advantage. So yes, I must say, nothing substitutes human interaction. But we actually found that COVID worked in our favor of being able to catch people that we ordinarily wouldn't have been able to reach because of scheduling or visa, kind of issue. So it really, I found that it worked in our favor. But I must admit, now what we are seeing is there is a little bit of Zoom fatigue. So this is where I think slowly we need to have a balancing act between the work that we do and the service that we provide virtually, and having at least small events of human interaction involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the virtual aspect definitely increases accessibility. Like you said, you don't have to worry about flying across the world. And you also save on catering costs as well. So
Exactly.
there's those advantages.
I've actually been told that a lot of the corporates were actually silently very, very happy about the COVID situation because
Uh-huh.
they got to save so much money on catering and
Yep,
food and etc. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah, digital events are fun. A little like there was one yesterday actually that our colleagues at Empower Africa hosted. It was an agriculture event on this. Yeah, it was on this digital platform that we set up, and it was so crowded. It's one of these things where you have these like virtual tables, right? And you have like
It's like
people
a
at the
window.
tables you can see. Kind of like that, yeah, kind of like that. But we logged in. I put a picture of it on my Twitter. We logged in, and every single like seat was filled. And I felt like that feeling when you walk into like a really crowded like real party, and you're one there, and you like don't know who to approach, and you feel like
Actually
awkward.
see their faces on the table?
No, you see their names, and if they put up a picture,
okay.
and then yeah. And you see that, but like I felt that like same feeling like when you walk into a crowded room. I was like, kind of like shy.
You shy? That's classic. That was used to describe you.
Like I don't feel you.
I don't know. There's another one coming up next week for women's empowerment, actually. So maybe I'll be a little bit more talkative there, and we'll go to some of the tables. But I don't know. There's nothing like face-to-face interaction.
Nothing. There's no substitute, most unfortunately.
And it's gonna happen soon. I don't know, Grace, if we're gonna see you in South Africa, Silicon Valley, or Israel, but it's gotta be one of those spots, or maybe even somewhere else, right? Like, like there's business probably to be done in like Seychelles.
Yeah.
Startups there.
That would be amazing.
So how large is the Joburg plug and play office?
One.
Yeah.
I've been doing all of this effectively on my own for the year. But I have been getting help from my colleagues in Europe as well as in Silicon Valley. So they've been most helpful. But finally, just given the traction and the work that's also coming and that we're doing with the Corporate Innovation Challenge and APW, I'm actually happy to say that I actually am hiring. So if you guys know of anybody, I'm actually now looking for a ventures analyst or ventures associate, as well as a account success manager, to be based in Johannesburg or Cape Town in South Africa. So I am finally looking to expand. So it is exciting times, but it's been a tough, semi-lonely journey before. But you have to start somewhere.
But I guess you're used to those long hours from your investment banking days.
Yeah, to your point again. Yeah, I think it was, you just kind of took the long hours and the toil in my stride, and it was fine. It was fine. Yeah, but I'm very excited to be expanding the team now.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that you have all of us around the world that are just supporting and ready to work and help and in any way, just because this ecosystem is so strong in the vision of where we're headed, right? So everybody will have their full-time jobs and get a salary from somewhere, we'll all be working together at the end of the day, because we're still in that beautiful position where a win for any player in the ecosystem is a win for the ecosystem at large. I've one last question from my side, which is, just take deal terms off the table, right? Take all sort of traditional business, put it aside. Pick any African startup and any corporate that, like, in your dream scenario that you'd want to see, like, collaborate, right? That hasn't happened yet. What would be sort of like your it could be as futuristic as you want it to be, or
I told you I wasn't a creative.
Yeah.
No, okay, let's
no?
let me be a sport. Let's try, I think. A corporate and a startup that is like out of this world that I would see working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could collaborate
I'd love to see
on anything.
a startup from a township with a great innovation.
Okay.
Working with Louis Vuitton and finding a great pilot that can help with the township economy, be it helping somehow, the scraps of, I don't know, textiles that, Louis Vuitton has, using those scraps and helping the township economy in some shape or form. Now that would be something.
That would be so
Yeah, that would be really cool. Okay, I guess we know what you're sourcing for
Yeah.
next. Well, Louis Vuitton is not a corporate partner. I'm not too sure.
That's why she's not buying his ice cream Tendai with all that Flutterwave money. To Louis Vuitton or into that
Put it
startup.
into the universe.
Put it into the universe.
Next year will come.
Yeah, I don't even know how.
And there'll be a client.
Yeah, but I just, but I think
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think it just speaks to I think it just speaks to my heart of I think township economy, there's a lot that can and needs to be done. I think fintech has really paved the way as it pertains to not having people have to like drive miles and miles to go to the bank in order to get money. So I think fintech has definitely led the way. Now I feel like the next wave is maybe agriculture, helping farmers to be a little bit more efficient and effective. And then afterwards, the whole thing, like food, shelter, clothing. So I'd love to see more and more of the big corporates seeing how they can contribute to the advancement of township economy transformation.
Actually, because I think just because not everyone is familiar with township economy, can you sort of describe what township economy is?
Yeah, sure. So township economy is effectively your rural areas where typically they have struggled to get the most basic of services, be it electricity, water, a roof over their head, relying on government granting for food, etc. And these places, and these are parts of the world that are very far away from the city. And so if they need anything that's related to banking or even healthcare, they would have to travel hours and hours just to get there, see a doctor or to see a nurse. So I think it's that more, and these are actually, they're not a minority, it's actually a large part of the population on the African continent, where technology can really help them be able to access the most basic of services, be it from seeing a doctor or accessing food or needing funding.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. I think
Wow.
one of the only things that's needed maybe is more infrastructure, at least to help kind of
Spot on.
facilitate
Spot on.
technology
Spot on.
ecosystem.
Spot on.
Yeah,
Spot
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Sure.
Yes. Oh, Caleb, did you have something else?
No, I just wanted to say that was just a really powerful sort of call to action to all of us. Something that I didn't necessarily know about. Your insights on the South African ecosystem were just so thought provoking, and really
Of course.
really appreciated. And your time is of course appreciated. Just before we wrap up, I wanted to give you the stage. If there's anything that you want to plug or you want to play.
No. This,
Anyway,
this is a great platform that you have, I must say. Like, well done to you guys. I think you like, even just reflecting on this past hour, you've really taken me into like the depths of my soul, and you forced me to like really vocally reflect. And that's something very, very powerful. And you've just kind of reminded me of my why. So it's really easy to get, absorbed into the day-to-day scheduling meeting after meeting. But yeah, I think it's good what you guys are doing. Please continue to, spread the message, have these kind of, relaxed discussions that hopefully, someone really needed to hear my story as well of, all things are possible. Like a young rural girl like me can find themselves living and working in New York, coming back and also working for the continent. There are endless possibilities. So yeah, no, thanks very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this, and yeah, thank you very much for reminding me of my why as well. And yeah, I implore everyone that's listening to never forget what their why is. What is their North Star, to really make an impact or a difference in the world.
Yeah, I mean, the pleasure is ours.
I'm empowered.
You empowered me.
I'm empowered.
Speechless.
Yeah.
And you're definitely an inspiration as well.
That's
for everyone,
No.
So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. Reminding us of our why. I hope that your parents might actually hear this.
I think
and definitely send it to them. And we may or may not, when we have you back on the show, bring them on as well. Like a little bit about what Grace was like as a young kid.
Until then.
Hey, thank you so much for being here, Grace. Thanks to everybody out there. Episode 6 signing off.
Awesome.
And God will see you next week. Thank you so much, Grace.
See you next week.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you, Tendai. Good to see you.
Bye.